and welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Nyambura and this is 100 on Books. Today I'm going to be sharing the books I got in July and August of this year. I somehow haven't mentioned them, so I figured might as well mention them now. So in mid-July, I want to say, I went to Cheche Books for a weekly craft night I'm part of and got 4 books, and so I'll show you those. First of those was Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reid. This was a hot book at some point, and I'm just going to read the back. When Amira is apprehended at her supermarket for kidnapping the white child she is actually babysitting, her employer Alex resolves to make things right. So begins a crash course that will upend everything they think they know about themselves, each other, and the messy dynamics of privilege. I picked this up because I enjoyed it when I read it. I've been trying as much as possible to buy books that I enjoyed when I borrowed them from the library or from a friend or something. And then I lent it to my friend Makena Maganjo. I'm going to put a link to something she's done down below. And she pointed out that there are elements of fat phobia in this book, which somehow had escaped me when I read it. As I said, I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed it so much that I even went and listened to Kylie Reid's World Book Club interview, read An Easy Street, which she recommended, and so on. So, I was in deep, and it reminded me how it's such a pleasure to read in community with other people, because I don't think the fat phobia in this book would ever have popped up to me if somebody else had not pointed it out. Anyway, either way, it's quite an interesting book, and that's Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reid. This is the UK and Commonwealth edition. The next book I got was All the Names They Use for God by Anjali Sachdeva. This is another book I have read before. So I'm just going to read the back, and it says, the stories in All the Names They Use for God break down genre barriers, from science fiction to American Gothic to magical realism to horror, and are united by characters who walk the bloodline between salvation and destruction. I enjoyed the stories when I read them. Cannot remember any of them now, but because I had enjoyed the stories, when I saw this book in Cheche, I picked it up. And I'm going to put a link to Cheche's Instagram down below, just so you can check them out. They're really interesting, bookstore. The next book I picked up was Black Cake by Charmaine Wilkerson. I believe I read this last year, but let me just confirm. Yeah, 2022, because that's when it was published. And I really enjoyed it, so when I saw a copy of this, I had to pick it up. And at the back it says, in present-day California, Eleanor Bennett's death leaves behind a puzzling inheritance for her 2 children, Byron and Benny. A traditional Caribbean black cake made from a family recipe with a long history and a voice recording. In her message, Eleanor shares a tumultuous story about a headstrong young swimmer who escapes her island home under suspicion of murder. The heartbreaking tale Eleanor unfolds, the secrets she still holds back, and the mystery of a long-lost child challenge everything the siblings thought they knew about their identities and themselves. Can Byron and Benny reclaim their once close relationship, piece together Eleanor's true history, and fulfill her final request to share the black cake when the time is right? Will their mother's revelations bring them back together or leave them feeling more lost than ever? Charmaine Wilkerson's debut novel is a story of how the inheritance of betrayals, secrets, memories, and even names can shape relationships and history. Deeply evocative and beautifully written, Black Cake is an extraordinary journey through the life of a family changed forever by the choices of its matriarch. And that's Black Cake by Charmaine Wilkerson. Of the 4 books I got at Cheche, the only one I've not read before is Loose Ties by Yara Nakahanda Monteiro, translated by Sandra Tamele. This is a book originally in Portuguese, which was recommended to me by Degwanguru, who at that point worked at Cheche. He's now an independent, worker. And so I said, why not? I'm always trying to pick up books in translation, and especially books by women in translation. So let's read the back. A few weeks before her wedding, Angolan-born Portugal residing Vitória is a runaway bride back to an Angola she has no memory of. Desperate to connect with the mother she never knew, she establishes her base for her search at the home of a family friend who, with her twin daughters, introduce her to the 3 Luandas, a Luanda for the rich and powerful who are above the rules, another Luanda for the aspirational middle class who are flattered by any proximity to the rich and powerful, and yet another for the poor doing what they can to eke out a living in a city that sees them but chooses to ignore them. And what does the commanding overcoloned poetry reciting General Zacharias Windu know about her mother, a former independence cadre? A radio announcement in the presence of a new friend will lead her from Luanda to Huambo, where her journey will take unexpected turns and where her questions are answered. Will the answers be to her satisfaction? Montero's Lose Ties is a lyrical narrative of sisterhood, loss, and humans' eternal quest for love and acceptance. So that's Lose Ties by Yara Nakahanda Montero, translated by Sandra Tamele. So that's all from my Cheche books haul. Then in late July, I went for the Wana Magere comic book launch and I got a copy of the comic. This is Wana Magere chapter 1, Umati, and it's described thus at the back. When youth start disappearing in the local town, college students and cultural enthusiasts, Neema and Jawar, descendants of the great Luanda Magere, begin to investigate the matter. On their journey to uncover the cause of the happenings, they fall into a web of mystery and lost cultural artifacts. So it's been a while since I got a comic book, and I can't remember the last time I got a Kenyan comic book specifically, so I was excited to pick this up. And I went for the launch with my friend Sharon, who I think I've mentioned before. We are in a group where we watch Miyazaki films together. She's a really cool person, so it was also nice to spend time with her and to pick up the comic book with her, and maybe we are going to discuss it at some point in the future. Then in early August, I went to the Soma Nami African Book Fair, where I picked up 2 books. One was hand sold to me by my friend Peter Ngila, who is an award-winning writer. I'm going to post a link to some of his work down below. And it's Streetlights at Noon Eclipse, which is a poetry anthology celebrating 12 years of shaping poetry in Uganda. So at the back it says, a lot could happen in 12 years. Indeed, a great deal has happened to Uganda. An Olympic gold medal, mudslides, harvests, a million newborns, joy, loss, death, a brace of national elections, and everything these imply for a volatile post-colony, dashed hopes, bruised promises, generational trauma, yet Ugandans endure, permanent as the Rwenzoris, the sole staff of which were made intact. It is out of such a people that the lantern meat of poets emerged, a collective of creative rebels forced from their country's womb aflame. No one knew for sure when that handful of university students convened at Kampala National Theatre to start a poetry circle one Sunday in 2007, that what will become an ongoing tradition of fortnightly poetry fellowships and biannual recitals would cyclically fill auditoriums and rouse a generation to take up the pen. For 12 years, the Lantern Meet has upheld a tradition where critique is benediction and transcendent aesthetic the prize. We have thrilled and inspired, learned and taught, preached and profaned, prophesied and reminded, but mostly we have loved and been loved back. Now we give back to all who have loved us, a memento of those heady first 12 years. Here's to another 12. And so that's Streetlights at Noon Eclipse. I have not even opened the plastic on this book, mostly because I'm not a huge poetry fan, but I'm trying to expand my horizons, so maybe the first step is going to be taking off the plastic. The other book I got during the book fair was one that was being sold by Soma Nami actually, and that was Essays in Honor of Ama Ata Aidu at 70, a reader in African Cultural Studies, which is edited by Anne V. Adams. I don't have my copy here, so I'm just going to put an image right here. And I lent it to my friend Rosie Olang, who is the reason I bought it to begin with. Ama Ata Aidu passed away earlier this year, maybe late last year. I'm going to put a link to tributes down below, and she's one of those, key figures in African literature and so on. So when the book comes back, I'm going to be really enthusiastic about reading some of those essays. Then lastly, in mid-August, I picked up 3 books from Martin, who is the children's bookseller opposite City Market in the CBD. I've talked about him before. And those three were Mother Tongue, a novel by Demetria Martinez. And it says at the back, Mary is 19 and living alone in Albuquerque. Adrift in the wake of her mother's death, she longs for something meaningful to take her over. Then Jose Luis enters her life. A refugee from El Salvador in its bloody civil war, Jose has been smuggled to the United States as part of the sanctuary movement. Mary cannot help but fall in love with the movement and the man, and little by little, she begins to reveal to Jose Luis a part of herself she has never known. So that's Mother Tongue by Demetria Martinez. Next, I picked up 43 Cemetery Road, Dying to Meet You by Kate Cleese, and illustrated by M. Sarah Cleese. And this I actually talked about in a previous roundup, but I'm just going to read the back. The best-selling author Ignatius B. Grampley moves into the Victorian mansion at 43 Old Cemetery Road, hoping to find some peace and quiet so that he can crack a wicked case of writer's block. But 43 Old Cemetery Road is already occupied by an 11-year-old boy named Semo, his cat Shadow, and an irritable ghost named Olive, and they have no intention of sharing. I really enjoyed this book, and I'm going to post a link to the part of the video where I talk about it down below. The last of the books I got in July and August was Make and Do, which is this volume 11 of Make and Do from the How and Why library. And it's a collection of crafts one can do at home. As the name suggests, one can make and do. So rabbit traces, paper plate masks, cardboard prints, things like those. And I'm in my craft era, as I said, I'm even in a crafting group, so this really stood out to me, so I had to pick it up. And that's it. Those are the books I got in July and August. Please let me know if you've gotten any interesting books lately, or if you've borrowed any interesting books lately. I'm always interested in knowing what books catch one's attention enough for one to acquire them. And thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, and all the good things, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.